Greetings and welcome back to another iteration of MGTOW Talks. I'm here today with the now somewhat infamous Niko. He's a medical doctor, which I think makes him rather unique in the MGTOW community. And he has his own channel and makes his own interesting videos. And of course, I'll be posting a link in the low bar so you can check his channel out. And we are going to be talking today about, what are we talking about, Niko?
We're going to be talking about activism.
Yep. What we'll be talking about.
MGTOW.
MGTOW and activism. So why don't you start it off then?
Okay. All right. There've been discussions, and I mean, there've been discussions about a lot of things recently in the community. One of those has been about activism, and I think CS MGTOW has posted an article on Barbarossa's website.
I read it.
Yeah. So what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was spot on. I mean, I should point out that he actually mentioned that making videos, as say Barbarossa or I have done, is some form of activism. I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's no doubt. I mean, I know people have told me that I've helped them in their lives and to get through some difficult points. So if you want to call that activism, then feel free. I'm personally not inclined to call that activism, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what would you define as activism?
Well, I think activism is more traditionally the sort of picketing the courthouse and advocating in parliament or what have you, and what MRAs do, or what's that Fathers Association in the UK? I forget the name. Things like that. Fathers for Justice, I think that's what it's called. That sort of thing. That's activism. But I think there's an idea, though, behind activism that if you're not an active participant in official activism, you're not doing anything positive, or you're not helping, and I wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah, well, okay. So you consider activism to be an act, for example, that promotes changes in laws, changes in the way things are, and stuff like that. I mean, that's what I'm presuming.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah, so standing outside the parliament, holding out, I don't know, signs.
Yep.
Sitting on people's
writing
faces.
letters to politicians.
Sitting on people's faces and all that. Like the feminists do.
Sitting on people's faces. Man.
Yeah, I mean, the feminists did.
I don't know, man. I just think that's your perverse mind, but we're used to it.
They actually did this very recently. They were sitting on people's faces. I don't know what the hell they were complaining about, but that's feminists for you.
Okay, and I thought that was one of your typical allusions to some, I don't know, oral sex or something. But anyway.
No, not when you looked at those women. So. All right. No, I mean, that's not what I think activism might be. And I mean, we're talking about activism in the light of MGTOW. And I think there is this misconception, let's say, that we want to go out, stand outside the parliament, try to, I don't know, wear matching clothes, paint our faces, and start shouting for justice for all men.
Yeah. Well, it's not something I would do, but yeah, I mean, there's an idea behind that, yeah.
Because we know how well and how much people care about men, after all.
Well, I think, you're kind of getting to the point, right? The problem is that we're just wired biologically and consequently socially to, actually the most recent video I posted is kind of relevant, which I posted today. When you check that out, but
I haven't.
Well, anyway, a major footballer was basically punched in the face 3 times, and the woman had a ring on her fan, and nothing had happened. He had actually a bloody lip, and he didn't press charges. So I mean, we live in a world that just doesn't care about men, frankly speaking. I mean, I've said this a million times. Unless you're doing something relevant or important, and the minute you lose that capacity to do that, you disappear. And so, I mean, I hate to invoke mythology and philosophy, but there's a term in German, Sisyphus work, and sometimes we'll say Sisyphean. Well, you might be familiar with the myth of Sisyphus, this guy who was condemned to roll a rock, a boulder up a hill for all eternity, and then he'd almost get to the top and it rolled back down. It's this kind of work, the Sisyphus work, which personally I see as activism, because activism only makes sense if you have stated goals and those goals are achievable and can be realized. And if you have the entire world stacked against you because they're just blinded by their autopilot functions and autopilot drives and essentially subconscious thoughts without really having access to their conscious thoughts and the whole interconnection between all that. I mean, it just seems to me to be a waste of time. I mean, trying to even convince people that there's such a thing as gynocentrism, or that men suffer in society disproportionately compared to women. I mean, this is considered in mainstream at least some sort of either a bogus claim or an incredible sort of leap of faith. We're so blinded by our instincts. And of course, part of taking the red pill, part of going your own way is deprogramming that and deprogramming those instincts, and then becoming aware and actually seeing reality for what it is. And when you see reality for what it is, the kind of conventional activism that you might find within the ranks of the MRA, or for that matter in any other sort of political advocacy group, doesn't really make sense. Because if you look at political groups, let's look in the UK, like Labour versus UKIP. I mean, yeah, there are people on each side, right, that have interest and are represented there and feel sort of associated with that. That's not the same thing as trying to combat gynocentrism and the tendency to put women's interests and lives and livelihood ahead of males. And so, having said all of that, I don't think it should be construed or misconstrued as to what I'm saying, that I believe that we shouldn't be helping men. I never said anything like that, but I don't think that conventional activism is particularly useful. So,
well, I'm gonna say something that you probably didn't expect. I agree with every single word again.
Okay, and now the anal joke? No, just kidding.
No anal jokes
Okay.
yet. Give it time.
Okay.
Right. But I agree with everything you said. The fight, the political fight, the fight to wake up absolutely everyone, the fight to take the message to everyone or try to convince people of gynocentrism and all that, especially in the political arena and all that, is completely bogus bullshit. It will never work. Right? That's not what I mean by activism. Here in MGTOW, we have a group of men, right? We're not a big group. We're not a massive group, but we do exist in the thousands, let's say. Maybe if you look outside MGTOW from YouTube, you might find a couple of million. We're not in numbers a huge force or a force to be reckoned with. Not at all, right? But we are a group of men that have woken up to the things you've just mentioned, and a group of men that understand that a lot of the men actually suffer, and a lot of the men are going through a lot of shit. And it's very important that we keep this in mind, because it can wake up, I mean, it can make you go either one or two ways. It can make you apathetic and not give a shit about any man suffering around you, or it can make you care about those men because you once were one of those people. And I think, at least for a lot of the content producers, that there is inside of them a need to help other men. Maybe not a need that you need to do on an everyday basis or whatever, but it feels good to help someone. It feels good to see someone who's going through the same shit that you went through and helping them get through it. A lot less harm than you did,
Yeah, the problem, I mean, I guess sometimes I might be characterized as sort of an apathetic content producer. I wouldn't say that. I don't agree with that. But I can give you a concrete example of the problem. And this is deeply related to this. Now, we've talked privately about this, but I'll mention this for the sake of the audience again. A couple of weeks ago, I was playing a game, and I met this Dutch guy, 22-year-old young guy. in a long-term, long-distance relationship with an American woman. And when I meet people like this, I listen to what he has to say, and he was telling me how he'd like to move to the United States, and the easiest way to do that, to get around the visa issue, of course, would be to marry her, right? Because then, full rights to stay and work and what have you. And when he said that, it must seem really strange to a young guy that some old guy he's never talked to before just sort of jumps in and says, "Look, man, I in some way I hate doing this. It's really weird, but I have to tell you this, that you marrying this American woman to be able to work there, whatever your intentions, however great you think your relationship is, it's a horrible idea. It's a terrible idea, and I would strongly advise you not to do that." And we talked for 2 hours, I think, and then we talked again later on, I think a week later, and I brought it up one last time. And what do these young guys think? They say, "No, I'm special. Our relationship is special. We communicate more." And when you reach my age, you've heard this line every time. In fact, I thought at the same time, my relationship back in the day was special. This relationship was special. This is different. This is going to withstand the test of time and the tribulations ahead and blah, blah, blah. But after the second try of speaking hours to this guy, I gave up. So the problem I think we have, if you want to talk about this kind of activism, and I do try to help men in this way, is that there is a pronounced resistance to it. Because, as they say sometimes, the worst vice is advice. It's hard to create a real picture in your head of other people's experiences. Now, I know that it's a horrible idea for this young man to marry his girlfriend so he can work there. I mean, the girl is 20 years old. Talk about divorce statistics. Much, much more likely, if you're getting married in your early 20s, to get divorced. And she'll be doing it as well. So the question is then, what do you do? Because I can tell him about my experiences. I can tell him about other men's experiences that I've known or I'm friends with. But you're just kind of left between a rock and a hard place, because at the end of the day, let's face it, most men, young men, they're convinced of what they're doing, and they're going to do what they're going to do. That's not always the case. I mean, I managed to, and he's now a good friend of mine, to, I guess, save, if you will, a guy from the traditional blue pill path. But that's rare. It's rare. And I would reckon he's a pretty insightful individual, because he actually took time to reflect and then look at his environment and think, you know what? Maybe what Stardust is saying to me, maybe what Barbarossa is saying in his videos, maybe that's true, because when I look around, it certainly seems to be true. But this guy was just, going on with basically in the waltz, and we have a special relationship, and how they communicate really well, and that's gonna. So, what do you do with it? I mean, I don't know. I try my best when I encounter a situation like that, and I'm fortunate that he didn't take it in a negative way, and we're still on friendly terms when we encounter each other. But you just kind of left to shrug your shoulders, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, what you just did is an attempt to prevention.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it is an attempt to prevention. And sometimes prevention fails. Actually, most of the times prevention fails. But it is the best medicine to not have to go through the disease, and the disease being in this situation, getting married, getting in that state, and then having to collect the ruins of yourself afterwards. But sometimes, you need to cure people of the disease. And I don't mean going into their marriages, but after their relationship fails, then you can pick those broken men up and try to make them as whole as they were before.
That's a lot easier to do, actually, than trying to convince some young blood who doesn't have life experience and sees the world through rose-tinted glasses. It's much easier because when you've had some life experience, you can reflect on those experiences, and when those experiences then are somehow relatable to your own experiences, or at least the descriptions you offer people, about the world, about how men and women interact, etc. You can realize it, and more importantly, you can internalize it. I think when I was talking to the young Dutch guy, it was just abstractions to him. It was just, well, and I mean, for one thing, he was so gung ho about this relationship. I was kind of I was trying to, chip away at rocks with a fork, basically. It just doesn't work. But that's the unfortunate thing. I mean, the positive thing is, once you've been essentially, broken, in some cases, it's much easier to convey the message and explain things. Because then the guys say, oh, yeah, that's what she was doing, and, that's what I was doing, and so on. And sometimes it never works. I mean, let's face it, I didn't really start waking up until my early 30s. I was pretty jaded. I was kind of purple pill by my early 30s, pretty jaded, pretty cynical. And throughout my 20s, I basically just had all my emotions drained from me because there was nothing left at the end, and I'm kind of persist in that state today. So sometimes you got to go through a lot of shit before you finally get it. And some people, I mean, you see these guys. I think Phil Collins is a classic example. I think he's on his fourth marriage. I don't know, but he was a very talented musician who's lost tremendous money to his ex-wives, and he just repeats the mistake over and over again, like a wind-up toy. So I think it's a shame that men have to first go through these experiences, but it might actually be necessary. That it's rare that young blood reacts positively to the message, because, as you know, I mean, the hormones are raging. There's that yearning, and we talked about this before. The idea of falling in love. I mean, at the very least, they're open to the idea that it might be something sought after. When you're young, you want to feel alive. You have all this energy. You're in your physical prime. It's hard to talk that down with just hey, dude, check this out. I went through this and this, and this could very likely happen to you as well. And especially when you're young, it's hard to imagine that the world is indifferent to you because you're a male, and or the nature of the male-female. I mean, if you're a 21 or 22-year-old, do you really want to hear that? Sorry to break it to you, but every relationship between a man and a woman is transactional, and it's essentially a business deal. And you give her shit, and she gives you sex and emotional comfort and blah blah blah. And when you stop doing that, she stops doing it too, and she loses interest in you. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. No, especially a young guy. Put it in those really blunt terms. For that matter, anyone, women and men, don't want to hear the actual nature of their relationship. But so I mean, I'm all for helping men, but in that case, that's really hard. And I think it's easier to help guys who have already suffered. And I hate to say that, but it's true.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. It is a lot easier to come to the message if you go through some shit yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost impossible to try and explain to people who cannot relate with the stories and the information that you're conveying to them what the reality actually is. It is impossible sometimes. But some people actually find the message on their own. Young people, and I've met a lot of young guys. Recently I had a guy 20 years old in my channel who said that he found MGTOW, and right now he's looking at his friends in relationships with pity, and he has more knowledge than them, and he's not in a relationship, and he found MGTOW just by searching around and listening with an open mind. And it is possible.
I don't deny that, but I would reckon that a 20-year-old is still going to feel that inner tension. I mean, because you're in your physical prime, the hormones are raging. It's different being almost 40 and then being in your young 20s and dealing with these issues, because I wasn't dealing with these issues when I was in my young 20s because there was no one around to tell me. I was just, a lovesick puppy chasing after women and tolerating all kinds of insanity, a relationship with someone just because the sex and cooking was good, and despite really just psychosis on her part in some cases. So that young guy is still going to be experiencing tension and difficulty, and it's not something that when you're older is quite as prominent. And so I don't doubt that the message can reach people, but especially if you've never experienced, being in love and all that stuff, it's, there's going to be that yearning, right? And it's powerful. And I know you disagree with me on this, but if you want to experience love, you know, it's, I think, ultimately a lot safer to do a couple of cocaine lines. But
Yeah, I disagree with the fact that it's safer because cocaine is the only cause that of calcified arteries in young men. That's why I disagree with that
yeah,
statement.
you are a doctor. I mean, he is a doctor. I don't do coke, but I'm honest. Maybe sort of semi metaphorically that
I understand what you mean.
you
I
know,
do
certain
understand.
narcotics can produce the same, or you know, in Devil's Advocate, when Al Pacino says, you know, his son in the film, Keanu Reeves, you know, what about love? And he says, well, no different than eating large quantities of chocolate. And I think the point is that it's just a prolonged state of chemical high, and you can reproduce it through other means.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I mean, what Barbarossa coined and termed the male mother need, I call it the heroin effect because when I went through and read the experiences of patients or heroin addicts, the feeling that you get is exactly the same as you might get when you're with a woman and feeling that hugging experience where you're feeling safe and loved and everything at the same time. Yeah, it feels exactly like doing heroin for obviously for a shorter period of time. Obviously, a lot less damaging than having a relationship. Um, and I'm sorry that I said that, but yeah, I mean, of course, it's just chemicals going on in our heads, and I will not disagree with that, and I will not. I mean, I have the yearning, like you said, I do have that still, and I am younger than you, so maybe that's what's at fault.
Even, you know,
But
even I would call it a yearning, but you know, I still occasionally have interest in females, so happens.
mm, it doesn't completely go away, and I don't think it completely ever goes away.
No.
Maybe, yeah. Even when I talk to really older, let's say MGTOWs, they still have it there, and they still have interests towards women. It's how we're programmed. We cannot deny it. It gets easier to control it, sure.
Well, yeah, I mean they're pragmatic. For me, yeah, I'm occasionally, very occasionally, and very picky, but interested in certain females. But the minute I see that the effort is just kind of a waste, it's much easier to shut it off. It's much easier to say, oh, whatever, you know, because you know you've been there, you've done that, and you know that putting in tremendous effort into something or trying to pursue something is most likely ultimately isn't worth it.
Majority of the times, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And I consider myself lucky coming to MGTOW slightly later, sorry, slightly earlier on than some people. And when I speak to people that have come to MGTOW earlier than me, I find that, you know, very good because I think they can be in charge of their destinies in a much better way than you would have been otherwise. Because all the mistakes, all the bullshit, or let's say the majority of the mistakes and all that happen in your 20s, mid 20s, early 20s, maybe late 20s at times. But from 30 onwards, you start to learn. You start to look back at whatever you did. Not everyone, not everyone, but you do start to learn. Or at least with my friends, I find that 30-year-old men and all that, 35, let's say onwards, they're a lot more red pill aware without being red pill aware. They don't know what the red pill is, but they understand red pill concepts.
well, yeah, I mean, well, they say nothing's worse than life itself. It's just, you know, life beats the shit out of you over time, and somebody you're gonna learn something, right?
Hmm.
That's just a living experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you, like you said, and I'm gonna go back to the activism part. You disagree with going out and holding and shouting for male rights and all that, and doing whatever the MRAs were doing and the AVFM and all that lot were doing, or turning it into a business where you're basically trying to scam people into giving you money in a way to falsely promote laws that you know will never come to fruition and all that. Um, there is a deeper thing that you can do, right? If you do not go about changing laws, if you do not go about standing outside the parliament, if you do not go about trying to do any of the shit that, you know, other people have tried and failed in doing, you can actually start doing things that really matter. You can start doing things locally in communities. I mean, the mayor of Midtown is helping homeless men in the vicinity of where he's living, I'm presuming. You can do small things and change the lives of men nearby you, and you can do it in small groups and expand outwards. We can support worthwhile projects, right?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't. Yeah.
And we're not doing anything other than just promote understanding of male nature, showing that there is a deep connection that can exist between men. I actually believe that there can be true connections between men, true friendships that can exist between men, and you can help men, even men that you don't know, and you can feel a sense of satisfaction within you. And you just said that you felt satisfaction when you help someone.
Well, when I'm successful, at least. Otherwise, it generally feels like a waste of time. But yeah.
Yeah. There's many times that I try to change people's minds, and when you don't succeed in the end, you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I've wasted so much time. But that's how things are going to be. I mean,
Indeed.
my hope is for at some point to be able to dox myself, take money that I earned on my own, and create a small clinic for men to come for free, get support, get other men to talk to them, share their stories, and if they need medical help and all that, yes, I can offer that. As long as I'm there, I can definitely do that. I don't think there is any lack of men willing to do that. And me, one man, or you, one man, have the reach to speak to thousands of people more, and you can affect the lives of 1,000 people. Or we hope that we can achieve that. I think the MGTOW community is a lot more active than any other communities that I've seen around, and everyone has an opinion. Most people have opinions that drive me insane, but people have opinions and they share them and they talk, and it's an active, engaging community, and it's good.
Some aspects of it are, yeah. Not everything, but yeah. I'd agree.
So wait, if the activism was not to go outside into the outside the parliament, sit on people's faces and support for our testicles to be valued, would you be okay with that?
I mean, I'm a bit confused. I mean, I said I'm okay with everything you described. So if you want to call that activism, then I don't have a problem with it, if you will. I mean, I'm still going to help men the way I help men, which might be different from the way you do it or someone else does. But I don't. I mean, I don't even have a fundamental problem with activism. It's just not something I would pursue.
I think we're stuck in the definition of activism.
I'm
I
trying to
think
figure
if
out
you
what you're
define
trying to
it,
say. I mean, you're talking about, okay, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to be able to open up a clinic to help men, for example. But there are other ways I can help. Like I said, I try to reach out to young men when I encounter them. If I can sense that they're either in a bad situation or going to be in a bad situation, as was the case with the Dutch guy. And I've done this ever since I started running the channel. If they write to me and they tell me and they're in a bad situation, I get tons of fucking PMs, but still I usually try to get back and do what I can. I mean, but I'm just one person, and there's only so much I can do. And unfortunately, all I have are my words. I'm not wealthy. They're limited things. I'm not really sure what you're getting at. I have no problem with any of the things that you've described.
yeah,
No problem with opening up a clinic, helping them in homeless shelters. I mean, I don't understand if we're disagreeing on something. I'm not sure what we're disagreeing on.
we're not disagreeing on anything.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. So that makes
and
sense. Well,
that's the point that I was trying to make, that I think activism, if we're going to define MGTOW activism, is not going to be like the activism that other groups have made so far. We're going to be small groups that we're going to try and make small differences for a small number of individuals. I personally, very early on in my channel, because I was always so involved and I feel inclined in taking the time and speaking to everyone, taking time out of my day, and interacting with each and every one of the people that were asking me for help, or long ass emails that I was receiving and all that, I saw that one man cannot fucking do all this, giving each person individual attention, because that's what every person needs, individual attention. Like you said, you taking time out of your life, talking to someone, and trying to show them a different point of view, right? But if we can create within the MGTOW sphere a community that, let's say, believes in helping men or loves men, and actually cares for men, then that will happen not just by us, but by other people in the comment sections, by other people taking an active role, even if they're not creating content. Other people can invest, other people can provide, other people can do things without actually telling anyone. And I don't even believe it needs to happen under the MGTOW label, but I believe in MGTOW, it's the only group that actually gives a fuck about men. And I want us to expand outside MGTOW and give a fuck about all men.
Yeah, well, as I said, when you're dealing with so-called blue-pilled men, as opposed to red-pill men, whatever their age group, but of course younger men prominently, you're going to encounter resistance. And at some point in time, and that's the vast majority of men. I think if you want to push into blue pill ranks, it's going to be a lot more difficult, and you're going to run into resistance, and you're also going to run into female resistance, because blue pill men still have very close relations with women and are influenced by them. So that's difficult. I mean, personally, generally speaking, unless it's a particular situation like it was with the young Dutch guy, I mean, I just don't bother. Most of my friends are blue pill. I don't really talk to them about issues related to women or relationships. And hell, a couple of months ago, I helped a friend move in with his wife, and I never said anything about don't. Of course, I don't think it's a good idea, but it's his life. He's got to do what he's got to do. And a few times in the past, it was years ago, I tried to explain certain things to him. He sort of dismissed it or said, "Oh, but." It's just it's your doctor. It's triage, man. You can't save everyone.
Yeah, I remember you told me that before.
Yeah.
And I told you that I will try to save everyone, no matter
Well,
what
good on you,
happens to
man.
me.
Maybe I'm too jaded and cynical to try to save everyone. If I can save a few, it's better than nothing.
No, I think you're realistic, and I'm sometimes a stupid dreamer when it comes to these things. But I'm personally not going to refuse anyone who's a blue-pilled man in supporting them. And
Well, I think you're conflating. I mean, I don't know if you're. I'm not sure if it's directed to me, but I think you might be.
No, it isn't directed to
Okay,
you.
because I didn't say not support. I mean, if let's say his marriage or relationship or whatever falls apart, of course I'll listen to him, and I'll explain to him in rational terms what happened. But until then, he's kind of lost in the euphoria of his relationship, and it's just. So when the time comes, if it comes, I will listen to him. I'll be there for him. But as long as that's not the case, I don't have much to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I was trying to say with that point is that I wouldn't turn down a blue pill man, and I wasn't suggesting that you would, right? Not at all. What I was saying is that the whole point of this is to promote the idea that men matter, and to promote it even in the blue pill world, and in the red pill world. Because I occasionally get people that tell me, who the fuck cares about blue pill men? Who the fuck cares about other men? All that matters is me, right? And me. And I hear that a lot.
Yeah, but
and there is
people are going to think that way,
Yeah. People are inherently selfish. If
we all are, man. You are, I am. We're all selfish.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think of it differently. I think of it as in, right now, everywhere we look in society, men don't really matter. Men are disposable. Men can just be thrown away, discarded as if, they're worth nothing. And no one in society will try and pick a man up and help them. that's why when I think of MGTOW and I think of, the kind of interactions that I see in MGTOW and the ideas that I'm trying to promote, I want to promote that idea generally outside the society, that, a man can help another man, a man can care for another man, a man can truly love another man. And I don't mean that in any sexual sense, but love the relationship that he can have with another man and value it as much and more than the relationship that he had with a woman in his life. And that's an important concept to get out.
I kind of agree with you, but I mean, if you're talking about heterosexual men, at least there's some fundamental elements that are in play. At play, there's no, as a heterosexual male, I don't think there's anything in however close the relationship you might have or be in with a man. I mean, no homo, obviously, is you're not going to be able to duplicate the emotional content that you get from being in a relationship with a woman, for example. It's just you can't duplicate that. So you can certainly get something that is of equal strength and certainly of equal value, but the particulars that the female offers the male, which, they're just sort of biological buttons that are pressed, this can never be duplicated in the form of a heterosexual male friendship. And it's not, as this has been said a million times, it's not just sex, obviously. It's something much deeper than that. And I'm all for your idea, but men are always going to yearn after that particular abstract that women offer them at an emotional level that they can never get from other men. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I'm never suggesting that a man should lie in bed with another man and
Well,
try
I'm.
to yeah, and I know you're not suggesting that, but what I'm trying to say is that that type of relationship, like you described it, and our biological build-up, right, to get something more from women, will always be so. That will never change. That will never change, and that's simply biology. But what can change is the social aspect in how much value we put on our male friendships, on our male-to-male interactions with other men, And I'm not talking about just superficial friendships with the people that you've met once. I'm talking about people that you interact a lot, you talk to, you care about, you want them to be okay in their lives. And that exists in male-to-male friendships. At least it exists with me. And I mean, I made a video today, and in that video I said that there is almost, and I think you've mentioned this as well in one of your videos, and I'm not sure the name, but there is almost like a hate towards our bodies, towards ourselves, towards our masculinity, right? There's almost a distaste towards who we are.
Yeah.
And I propose that, MGTOW men say that they love men, or that they care about men all the time, or that they define their own masculinity. There is no exoteric factors that affect that. But I propose this experiment. Go out in public, find a man that you value, that you care about, that you're friends with, right? A man that he's heterosexual, right? He's not going to try anything funny or anything like that. And find that man in public and go around him and hug him and stay there for 30 Mississippis. Right? 30 Mississippis. Count backwards. And once that's done, let go and tell me what you really feel. And the majority of the men will tell you that they feel less manly, that was somehow feminine, that they felt exposed, that, we all understand this type of emotion. But that means that for us, our masculinity is not sitting inside of us, but is rather something that is affected by outside factors. And if you get two women to hug each other, yes, they don't do that. No one really does that in public and stays for 30 seconds unless they're fucking, right? But if you get two heterosexual women to do the same thing, and then they break apart, none of them would feel masculine. None of them would feel less feminine. Whatever they feel about their identity is inside of them. Yes, attention from men and all that matters, but what they are feminine, they never question. We do. And I don't know where it stems from, and I believe it stems from society. But I don't think it used to be like this forever.
Well, certainly in previous civilizations, male sexuality was viewed in a different light depending on the context. In ancient Greece, to some degree, there was, pederasty, taking young boys and having sexual relationships with them, that wasn't really frowned upon. Women were simply seen as means of reproduction. And certainly, I would imagine in Southern European cultures, people tend to be a lot more touchy-feely than in more northern climates. But
Yes.
yeah, I don't see any problem with any of that. It's just, once again, unlikely that a lot that's going to register with a lot of people, a lot of men, in my opinion.
We don't have to make it register. We have to make it
Well,
become normal, become acceptable,
well, it's
become the social norm.
that's like saying we have to make it become normal that men who aren't doing something important aren't invisible. It's not going to happen.
But let's think of it differently, right? We have the phenomenon of MGTOW right now, and then in Japan they have the herbivores. But I think there is a fundamental difference between the two. Let's say, I don't know what cultural phenomena, right? There is two fundamental difference. We're a lot more vocal. We talk, we research ourselves, and we try to look within us to understand what's going on with our masculinity, what it means to be a man, and all that. We're very different, right? No matter how similar we appear to be, we're very different. At least the way that I see it, we're different, and we share everything that we have come to accept or that we've researched ourselves outside in the public. And in the public, I mean on YouTube. And I don't see how this type of beliefs, this type of understanding cannot be transferred in real life and outside in the real world. I know that if you go and start hugging people randomly, you'll get beaten up. I understand that. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I'm suggesting is if you find a man in need in the real world, and it's not just, on YouTube or whatever, give him a helping hand. Try to help him along. Sit down and listen to his story. Share and, allow another man to share with you. And I think I shared with you one story that I bought some shoes, and I don't know why I bought shoes, but my other shoes kind of melted under my feet, so I went to buy some shoes, and I left the shoes in a taco shop because I ate tacos and I forgot my shoes there. And I realized that, and then I started to run back, and as I was running back, I saw this homeless guy. Now, this homeless guy I noticed him when I was going to buy my shoes, and he was just sitting there. And he had in front of him a hat with money in it. And when I was going back to get my shoes, the shoes that I forgot, I saw him crying, and crying quite openly, and everyone was avoiding him like cancer. How when you see a display of male weakness, people just avoid it and no one approaches because it's almost.
Well, they wish it were invisible, don't they?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what was happening, and I noticed that, and I believe that you should help people, you should help individuals, and I think you believe the same thing. And I ran back, got my shoes, and then ran straight back to find the guy, and the guy was still there, so I just sat next to him and I started talking to him, and he told me his story on how he, some guy came and punched him, and it was real. His face was bloody, and it was fresh blood, and I can recognize the difference. His face was bloody, and he took away his money and then ran away, and he couldn't run after him because he had medical problems that he couldn't really, follow through with. So I sat down and I was talking to him, and he told me that he pays £35 or something a week to stay in a hostel or something, because he's been kicked out of all the hostels that were around, the free ones at least. And that right now it took him the whole week to collect that money because no one approaches, no one gives money, no one cares. All right, you'll give a penny or a couple of pennies and you'll just avoid them, especially men, because You don't know. And this guy was a big guy, like potentially dangerous. So I looked in my wallet. I had like, what, 20 pounds. So I gave him 20 pounds, told him to put it in his pocket. And I sat there with him and I started talking to him. I put my hand on his shoulder and I just started talking to him and listening to his story. In under 5 minutes, the guy had 35 pounds in front of him. People were just throwing money. He suddenly became human again.
That's pretty transformative.
And I think that potential can happen for a lot of men. Men are not the scums of society. It's just that within us we have this programming that tells us, you know, that man, he's crying, he's weak, avoid him, you know, walk away from him and all that. And as soon as someone helps him, suddenly we see potential. Suddenly we see that, you know, he might be worthy of help. It's sad to see it happen in front of you, and it happened within minutes. I just sat next to him and money just started flowing and getting thrown into his hat. And I mean, like, I saw men walking past, stopping, turning around, opening their wallets and throwing money into his hat.
What about women? Were women doing it too?
I think I noticed one or two do it. But men definitely did it, especially men who were walking with women. So I mean, I don't care about the reasons that people did it, but that guy was there, and it took me like 10 minutes until I came back, let's say, and he had nothing in his fucking hat, and I sat next to him, and within 5 minutes, 6 minutes, the hat was full, he had money, and he was good to go. And that didn't finish. I didn't just achieve my goal and that was it. I went on. I sat with him, I discussed with him, I asked about his story, and his story is quite... He was a boxer, broke his hand in something that happened. His woman left him, he lost his family, he had no reason to live, and then he started drinking, and then he lost his home, and now he's on the streets. And that's it. That was his story in like under 20 seconds of describing it. But his suffering was real. And it's people like that that we can help before they reach that stage. And it's people like that we can prevent from going through the shit that will reach them to that stage. And we can help these men. I mean, showing some affection to someone randomly takes nothing out of you.
No,
And
I agree.
I know you do it. Yeah, that's the thing. I know people do it, and people don't talk about it. It's almost like a taboo subject. I don't know what it is.
What specifically that people don't talk about how they help people, or?
No, how... I mean, the fact that weak men are discarded in society and are overlooked all the time, we all know the reasons, and the disposability of men has been discussed a lot. But what I don't understand is why people do not talk more about actively going and helping people. And we don't want them to help like everyone or go out of their ways.
You're talking about people, MGTOW people, or people in general?
People in general.
Well, people in general, it's pretty obvious. I mean, when you're homeless, you're useless. You have no function, and you're invisible. And I mean, you can see the transformation. I've talked about this a lot, but at the risk of repeating myself, when I used to work in an office environment, I had to wear nice clothing, or whatever that means. A jacket and a button down and proper trousers and leather shoes, and I carried a leather satchel, and I could see that people looked at me differently. Women, they looked at me, period. I mean, women never look at me now because I just dress like a total bum, which is what my point. And then as I dress now, there's nothing, I have stained t-shirt that I just don't care about, and torn up jeans. Well, since it's almost 40 degrees here, shorts. But, I think you can, without even being homeless, you can notice this as an experiment, as a social experiment. If you're used to people checking you out, women specifically, and just sort of people looking at you in a certain way, spend some time walking around in really shitty clothing, and you'll just see the difference. So That's, of course, a step removed from being completely homeless, but and it's the same principle at the end of the day. It's not that different. Why, and but as far as red pill people are concerned, I think that's a different issue. But why, generally speaking, people, men and women, that's just the way the world is, the way it runs, right?
Yeah, and I told you, I mean, you know that about myself, that I dress. I'm disgusting. We talked about privately about how
Yeah,
disgusting I
and
am.
despite that, you are a destroyer of vaginal canals. Impressive.
And I do think that my friends, because I have friends that value me for, myself rather than how I dress, how I behave, and the kind of shit that I talk about. Um,
Men, yeah.
yeah, men and women on occasion they do like me for who I am when I don't engage in sexual intercourse with them. There is a couple of women that are left that I haven't slept with.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, amazing. Anyway, when that happens, like and let's say people interact with me, and I do notice that women will initially, let's say, evade their gaze from looking at me. They won't look at me, they won't talk to me and all that. And once it transpires, or people tell that woman or whatever what I do for a living, yeah, the situation changes. And it does bother me that in order to get value as a human being, you need to have a job, you need to be doing something valuable. It bothers me that, let's say, there could be MGTOW out there that could be passing Stardust, right, on the street daily, and not be giving you the light of day, not be giving a fuck about who you are because you're dressed like a bum, like you say. And it happens, it definitely happens to me. I mean, I know that getting someone to believe that I'm a doctor, and it happened to me when I stopped to help someone who was on the street, and I was just dressed in my casual clothes, and I just happened to have a stethoscope with me, and I just couple of shit that I could help someone. And I jumped down and I tried to help someone. The police did not believe me that I was a doctor. and and I had to just reach down and take my stethoscope and show them my name at the back. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, come along, help."
Yeah.
It's sad.
I don't know. For me, it's kind of weird, as I dress. I mean, major reason is just comfort, but it feels more comfortable. But, I think that contrast between being non-visible and then suddenly visible because you're dressing a certain way, that, I prefer being invisible because it's a constant reminder of the reality I'm living in. And I would rather not reinforce other impressions that I know are just completely deceptive. You know, I mean, it's part of it is just kind of being as true to reality as possible. I mean, I don't like the fact that men, including myself, are just irrelevant, but that's the way it is, and I don't think we're going to be able to do a whole lot to change that. Yeah. Maybe you can on an individual basis, right? But
But I believe by helping one or changing the perceptions of one, that one can change the perceptions of another one. And it's definitely not the domino effect that I hope and envision in my head. But realistically speaking, if we do exist in a community of men who care about other men and care about men, irrespective of their worth in society's eyes, right? Then we
well,
can
I mean,
definitely make a difference.
I think Stardust in society's eyes is utterly useless. I produce nothing of value, and people aren't interested in my thoughts. But yeah, I mean, it's really contextual. I mean, there are other practical problems. MGTOW as a community, if you want to call it that, is a sort of spread throughout the world. Majority of it's concentrated in the Anglosphere. I would even argue most of it's in the United States and Canada, some in the UK and Australia as well. And there are actually some in Germany as well, but my impression is they're just kind of guys who just think, women suck, that kind of thing, which isn't really that productive.
Hmm. And you need to get over that women suck.
Well, they do, but
They do suck, but you need to get over
exactly.
that
It's
mindset.
just, yeah, it's just. I mean, Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, that's just the way they are. I mean, we've talked about this before. So, um,
Women suck, women will suck, women suck because, that's how they are, right?
yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about it. So why dwell on that and not focus on ourselves? Why not focus on men? Why not focus on the suffering of
Well,
men?
certainly, yeah. I mean, if you wish to alleviate the suffering of men, or even if you just want to improve men's lives, that seems to me a much more feasible endeavor than concentrating on women, because we're certainly not going to change women. I mean, think about the kinds of women who are loosely involved in MGTOW. I mean, obviously they're not MGTOW. I think Girl Rights What is the most prominent one who's aware of it, and
Hmm.
there might be a couple of others. But I've noticed, for example, all the women I know who are somehow interested in MGTOW, they all have, for example, have male sons. It's because of some connection to males. Other than that, I mean, forget about it. So I agree on that. Can't
Yeah,
change women.
yeah, there is a vested interest in them. And let's say, at least for the women that are mothers, and I know that Girl Writes What is a mother.
2 sons. Yep.
Yeah, 2 sons, exactly. Um, it will be almost something that she cannot consider, especially when she starts understanding how things really work, that the care and effort that she put in raising those sons can just be gone to waste because of just how things are. And she wants to change how things work. And I think that's never going to change, but changing at least male perceptions, or a small group of male perceptions about other men, that is entirely possible. And I see that happening in MGTOW, not everywhere in MGTOW, because I see idiots everywhere around, but it definitely exists in MGTOW, in some MGTOW channels. Yours and Barbarossa's are definitely some of those channels. I think mine is as well, and I'm trying to promote that idea to, to as many people as I can reach. And I know I sound like almost like a dreamer when I talk about this, and I talk about doing big things, and about not just settling for very, very small things. But I always think I need to aim very far in order to achieve very little. And all that little that I achieve is never a disappointment for me. It is rather an achievement in itself. And I'm happy for changing the lives of 10 men, let's say, or 2 men, or, just the one. It still is a fundamental difference that has occurred in the world. It is something. And we need to think like that. We need to not just concentrate on the massive things and only get pleasure when we achieve critical mass, or whatever the fuck people say. We need to aim small, not aim small, aim large, but every small thing that we achieve, it is something that has been achieved. And it does make a difference. Like, if you haven't found Barbarossa, or Barbarossa did not find you, and this did not happen, this community would not exist right now. It does make a
it's
difference.
speculative, but it's possible, yeah.
No, I do think maybe the MGTOW community would exist, but it wouldn't exist under the ideas that it exists right now.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. Oh, wow. Can I get to something else, something that doesn't necessarily connect to activism as such, but I believe it has something to do with it.
Sure.
Remember when you've made a video about blotting out the sun?
Yep.
If we And in that video, you propose that if we get our message out to the masses, that would actually cause them to respond, and they wouldn't respond in kindness.
Yeah, well, I think well, the reality is, as I pointed out in that video, is that MGTOW's existence, men going their own way, is in large measure contingent upon blue pillars continuing to do their own thing. That is, going through marriage rituals, paying taxes for women to get their welfare and other benefits, and it's I don't think it's ever going to get there, mind you, but the reality is that in some hypothetical, theoretical world that's never going to exist, if 99% of men, 90% of men all take the red pill, society would collapse. I mean, people would take notice. Right now, MGTOW as a community or men going their way are minuscule. It just doesn't really, it doesn't really register on the radar. I mean, people are becoming aware of it, right? And actually, unfortunately, most of the awareness is just, oh, well, women suck. This guy hates women. That's all they think about. All these men or losers or whatever.
Yeah.
There's not much beyond that. But I mean, if men en masse started doing that, I mean, like I said, it's not going to happen. It's almost certainly not going to happen. But no, I stand by what I said in that video.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I remember I made a reply to you in that video because I didn't disagree with what you said in that video, but I really I really didn't like the conclusion that thought process was going, that we shouldn't well, it wasn't you shouldn't, you never said you should.
No, I didn't, so don't put words in my mouth.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be careful how I phrase this, and it is difficult because you know how quickly my mouth yaps. So the conclusion in my thought process from that video was, if we do grow, and I do think we should grow because that's how we help more men, and that's my focus. If we do grow, then if we grow to the level that we should grow, then there would be a backlash from society. And if there is a backlash from society, it definitely wouldn't be a positive one. And I mean, it comes down to thinking that maybe MGTOW men are, I mean, I'm opposed to paying taxes for things I fucking do not agree with. I don't want to be a stepfather to any child that is not mine. I don't want to be a stepfather to anyone. And I don't want to be paying taxes for people that just sit home, breed, and just, keep growing their children. And I keep paying for that. I really don't want to do that. Then I know...
Chavs.
Yeah, well, it does occur. And
dude, the UK, man. I mean, they get set records. What, 12-year-old mothers sometimes? I thought a really funny story a couple of years ago about a 25-year-old woman becoming a grandmother. Basically her daughter following in her footsteps.
That is disturbing on such a...
Can you imagine? She's 35 and she's got some kid that looks 10 or 12 and is that your mother? No, that's my great grandma.
But exactly, I mean, people see this as a business. Why is it suddenly my business or any other person's business what people do with their genitals? I'm not saying we should throw these children away, but it doesn't mean that should be well paid. Nobody
likes paying for shit that they don't use. I have to pay a fucking radio tax for a service I don't use, but just the way it is.
I'm willing to say that if, let's say in the UK at least, the way that things are, the people who work, the people who pay the taxes, or the people who are, let's say, valuable for society, are raising the children of everyone else. And whereas I would, let's say, if I was married, in my means right now, I would be able to have one child. If it goes later on, it would be 2 children. Yet there is people here that have 12, 14, 15, 16, and I'm thinking, how the hell would you have supported these children if there was no one to pay?
You know people with 16 children, that's impressive.
I've met someone with 16 children.
Okay, that's really impressive.
Yeah, that woman never saw a period. Yeah, never had a period in her life.
She's doing what God intended for her.
Yeah, you know what my beliefs are about that. As long as we have a brain, we need to use it in a way and not become a burden to everyone else. And I don't think MGTOW is a burden. to
Well,
anyone.
no, I mean, first off, MGTOW is pretty much invisible. People, as I pointed out, the things that a lot of MGTOW do are not considered productive by society and don't contribute to conventional notions of productivity. So, no, I mean, MGTOW is for the most part under the radar as far as its activities are concerned.
But a lot of the MGTOW that I've spoken to, a lot of them work, or at least are on their own, claiming benefits for themselves for health reasons or whatever has happened, right? It is one person for himself. That's all that person is. And yet, our beliefs, the ideology that stems from MGTOW, a lot of the times is met with extreme criticism because we're not going to reproduce, we're not going to continue the propagation of the species, or we're not going to engage with females and support them even more than we already do, as a lot of us actually work. And I'm thinking, at which point is a man allowed to be selfish, allowed to care for himself, allowed to care about the things that he cares about? And that point doesn't exist really. And the more we grow, and you're actually one of the reasons that we're growing, we are, I mean, in a way,
No idea. Maybe.
yeah. um, this message is gonna spread out and out, and then we will become visible very quickly, I think. We will become visible and frowned upon very quickly. I'm a lot more pessimistic than you.
No, I mean, I think you don't understand how the politics of sort of online stuff works. Well, here, I think MGTOW's going to get out, but it's not going to get out in any sort of subtle, refined form. It's not, call me arrogant, whatever. My videos tend to be long, usually. I go in a lot of detail. It takes a while. No, when MGTOW gets out, it's going to be the Sandman version, and that's what most people are familiar with who've heard of it. It's going to be, MGTOW United or Sexy. It's going to be it's the only conception people are going to have of MGTOW is, oh, you're just losers and you can't get laid and you hate women, and there's not going to be any subtlety to it. It's just going to be basically that, all the telling stories about women, complaining about women. They're not going to fucking, watch Escape Velocity or some shit like that. They're not going to do that. So, I think MGTOW will spread, but and you're right, there's going to be a negative reaction. But it's not because MGTOW represents refined ideas and accurate ideas about the nature of male and female relations and how the world works in accordance with that. It's going to be because, Sandman said this. So, I don't know, I mean, I differ slightly in that. The point is,
I think either way, it will be met with criticism.
No. See, not either way. The point. Look, I'm going to be posting a plug-in video for this guy, CS MGTOW. But so later. But he did interview a professor of evolutionary psychology. Now, I'm convinced that if MGTOW stick with the science, if we don't use hyperbolic language like evil or good, if we just try to be descriptive of things and explanatory, whatever errors we might commit, these are easily can be corrected rather easily. If it ever were to get out, we can always say, look, this is what the science says. This is, we've just been talking about how the world actually is. That's very different from some random, video complaining about women wearing high heels or some shit, or women suck. I mean, it's different. And so there are even within the MGTOW community, which is by no means uniform, there are very different approaches. And I maintain this stance, as I have had ever since I've made my opinions known, but we should be sticking to an accurate description of the world and trying to understand things as they are, and moving away from hyperbolic language or just merely sort of complaining about things. And if we do that, then if it ever happens, if we're met with opposition, all we need to do is point them to the facts, and the opposition will wither away because they'll have nothing on that. They can say, well, I guess you're right. So, on the other hand, if it just turns into the other version, well, No, so there is a critical difference here. So I don't think it's an either way. We can have a kind of MGTOW, and I think ultimately that's what it's going to be. That's going to spread out to the four corners of the earth, if you will, and or the far corners of the earth, and it's going to be the generic, MGTOW are just women hating losers, blah blah blah, with none of the subtlety or the refinement and ideas that is present or has been present in MGTOW, and that's my view.
Yeah, and well, I differ a bit with your view, and I know you're very familiar with what happened with atheism and
Hmm.
with religions, etc. I mean, all they were proposing were rational ideas, and the opposition eventually did wither away, somehow, right?
Well,
Uh,
most educated people, intelligent educated people are pretty religious. So yeah.
yeah. So what I'm saying is that the opposition would not exist in a manner that we expect. It's not going to be an intellectual opposition, even if the ideas that are proposed in MGTOW are yours and Barbarossa's intelligent, well-founded ideas that are well thought out and put out rationally. Even if those ideas are the ones that get out, I do think we will be met with criticism because of the basis of the philosophy and the philosophy and the results that that philosophy may bring about.
So
Doesn't mean
what?
that, yeah, exactly. What I'm saying is that either way, the opposition would be different. But what I mean, if your ideas and Barbarossa's ideas come out, they're the ones that get targeted, let's say, right? If your ideas are the ones that do get targeted, there would be ground for discussion. There would be ground for rational discussion and all ways to counteract their arguments. If the ideas that are targeted and we're all painted in that weird as misogynistic and stupid as hate paint that a lot of the MGTOW videos are nowadays, then there will be nothing that we can say to defend ourselves other than just say, that's not really
Not all
my
MGTOW
view.
are like that.
Yeah, not all MGTOW are like that. And we, even just proposing that, we're just sounding like, the feminists. It's,
Exactly, or women. Not all. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I think that once again, that's why, in my view, and I have no influence or control over this. It's just my opinion. It's
Mhm.
important that MGTOW have a certain form and to it, a specific form to it, rather than just sort of amorphous randomness, where anything you want is a sort of MGTOW. There's got to be something distinct about it. And as I mentioned in my other video a couple of days ago
Yeah.
about the culture wars, well, I mean, I see MGTOW on this continuum. You have, I'll correct myself with the acronym, the FFRs, the feminist first responders, who are just sort of, in lockstep, perpetual battle with these feminists and social justice warriors. And then you got us, and we're talking about, to some extent, the science behind it, the actual differences, and not really shying away from saying things that might be unpleasant and make people feel uncomfortable. And one of the reasons why we can do that is if you're going your own way, life and the world is pretty uncomfortable. You're a man, so there's nothing, you have no reason to make other people feel comfortable and accommodate them. But as long as we stick to the facts as
Hmm.
we understand them, it doesn't matter what the opposition is, because at the end of the day, facts are going to win. At the end of the day, in a rational discussion, if this whole culture war or whatever it's called winds down, look, there are feminists out there who talk about neurosexism. They claim this is, I mean, it's ludicrous. They have no evidence, despite fundamental differences between the male and female brain. For example, the amygdala and white and gray matter and things like that. Oh, this is all just neurosexism. This is insanity, and it's becoming increasingly clear to people that it is the case.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let the opposition come, as long as we have the facts and the truth on our side. But my concern, it's not a real concern, because I just think, I have no influence over it anyway. But my theoretical concern is that as MGTOW spreads and it's just sort of diluted of any content beyond, women suck and blah blah blah. All women are just gold digging whores. Well, a lot of them are, but so what? That doesn't really tell you. It's not very descriptive. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I completely agree, and I do try to almost find. I see myself as being in between, right? I try to be in between the two fronts. I want to be able to discuss with everyone. I want to be able to discuss with, let's say, the very logical end of the spectrum and the very end of the spectrum. And that was me not finding a word for it, because I don't even know what to describe that other than just hate. I want to be able to see and almost create a bridge to be able to understand where they're coming from and be able to get them to, move on, try to find something.
Yeah, it's
that
unlikely you can do that.
Yeah.
Look, you can't force people to be interested in certain things or to do certain things. They usually just come around on their own terms. So, what will be will be.
But and I do see in MGTOW, at least now that we're talking about, I don't know, fundamentalist, extremist, whatever the fuck, they might call themselves. These people, right? They're almost, to me, they sound like the extreme version of the feminists, right? The extremists that are willing to completely ignore evidence, even if new evidence was getting thrown their way. And you
came in. I'm sorry for interrupting. You came in a bit late. There was a time, this is years ago, when pretty much it was when Barbaros and I battling against certain tradcons, and there was this acronym, SATIF, same as the feminists, that came up, and all that they were saying in MGTOW were same as the feminists. Now at the time that wasn't true but now increasingly, certainly there are some elements in the MGTOW community that are basically more or less like feminists. But what are you going to do, man? The name is spreading, and the most accessible stuff about MGTOW is not going to be the long, complex stuff. Most people can't be bothered. They don't want to watch long videos, etc. They're just going to watch the short shit, get their emotional high. That's how people operate. There's a reason why Sandman videos are almost uniformly 10 minutes, 11 minutes, and they never go any more longer than that. Attention span, it's just, I'm significantly more pessimistic than you on this front, but I think all we can do is just, as you mentioned, try to help individual men and try to do our own thing. And there will be other people out there, and there will be the sexy MGTOWs and the Sandmans and the MGTOW United, and that's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to. I do think that the message is not the message. People will come to MGTOW for entertainment, and it bothers me. It does bother me, and I don't think that MGTOW videos cannot be entertaining, right? I think you can make entertaining videos at times, have a laugh, and Paul Produce is a prime example, and I think both of us like him.
Yeah, I like I don't know, there's just something about him. He's sort of shaving, and I know I got shit for this, but and it's unhealthy, but he really looks pretty cool when he smokes, actually.
Yeah,
so
smoking makes everyone look cool. Even if you give
I
a
didn't look
cigarette
cool
to
when I
one.
used to smoke, but some people more so than others, so he's one of them. Yeah.
It takes experience and practice, long years of destroying
destroying your
of
lungs, your arteries, and everything else.
Yeah. But you can make entertaining videos and have content in it and have value in what you're saying. Entertaining content in itself is not anything that we should walk away from. It's definitely fun to find a video that you can laugh at, and then you're able to find some meaning in it, obviously. But when you get something and you dilute it so much that there's nothing left, then all you're creating is just videos that are just bitching about shit. And I don't even know some of the stuff. I do watch it occasionally, and I just sit back and I'm trying to I might enjoy it, and I'll sit back and then just go like, what the fuck did I just watch? You know, what the fuck was that? What was the point of that? And there is no beginning, no middle part where the idea is developed, and no end. There is no conclusion in anything. And these things bother me because there is no scientific method applied. There's no way in
Oh
which you're
man,
trying. Yeah.
you must be new here, but you ever heard of PewDiePie?
I love
Brofist.
PewDiePie.
You love PewDiePie? Okay.
Yeah, man, I watch him. I was saying PewDiePie in one of the podcasts recently. I was just saying PewDiePie all the time.
Yeah.
It is stupid, but he's not claiming to not be stupid.
Yeah,
Right.
yes, this is his saving grace. He's I'm stupid and I admit it, and this is how I'm a multimillionaire. Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with people going and watching stupid things.
Mm.
But when the stupid things become MGTOW,
Well, this debate has been ongoing for a while. I mean, ever since I brought up Sandman back in 2014, and one positive development is over time, people have sort of come around and realized what Sandman actually represents. At the time, they didn't. They just thought, oh, it's just viciously attacking him and whatever. But I think a lot of people have come around to see the substance of what I was saying back then. So,
yeah.
I don't know what your own views of Sandman are, but
Do you want me to share? I don't mind.
dude, I don't care, man. Up to you.
Sandman. I was gonna say what a beautiful man, but I've never seen him. What I was going to say is, when I started, I did watch Sandman videos, but after a certain point in time, after you find one or two good videos, and I do think they exist within the thousands, or I don't know, couple of hundreds that exist, you do find yourself sitting in front of a computer listening to a video about how women and wearing high heels, like you say, relates to MGTOW. And if you have an ounce of brain on you, you stand up after you finish that video and you just go like, yeah, that's just bullshit, right? And then you start finding other things to watch. And I did tell you that I found your content and Barbarossa's content initially through Sandman, and not because Sandman was advertising, not at all. I don't think you guys were in very good terms, but other people were advertising underneath. People saying, what the fuck is this shit? Go and watch Barbarossa. What the fuck is this shit? Go and watch Stardust, and that's when I mean, my brain was initially stimulated in the fact that people were talking about this shit, and then I was like, yeah, this is just very surface. You're just scratching the surface. You need to go deeper. You need to look at other things, and once you reach Barbarossa and yourself, then you find the rest of the shit. You find content that actually makes sense, and there is people that even talk about feelings in a way that makes sense. And I'm not gonna leave Spetsnaz out of this conversation, because for me, he does push the boundary in terms of like getting men to accept that we are humans, we have feelings, and we have also inherent value as human beings. And you and Barbarossa also do the same from a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I've never. I like Spetsnaz. I never. I mean, that's nothing against him. I don't. As I said, I don't get a lot from his videos because when you're as emotionally vacant as I am, there's not much to be gotten from that sort of thing. But I definitely see the value in it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what, I don't know if we can get MGTOW to mean, and I I made a response video, and I told you I trolled someone who made a response video about me, and I just put naked guys everywhere. Not naked, topless guys. Naked was too much dick everywhere. No, I just put topless guys, and then I questioned him at the end. What is the point of your channel? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you here, right? And I do believe there needs to be a point. There needs to be an aim. There needs to be a goal. There needs to be a distinct message in what you're trying to spread, at least within MGTOW. And maybe I'm being, optimistic and all that. And I know, realistically speaking, you're right. all these things will inevitably happen as we're growing, and the message will get diluted on and on to infinity. It will become homeopathy for all we know. Um, yeah. So, but I do think there needs to be a point. There needs to be a certain value that needs to come out of every video, and not everyone needs to get value from every video. But some videos are directed for certain individuals. Some videos speak to certain individuals, and definitely some of us have different likes and dislikes, and some people speak more to us than others, and that's all okay. But there needs to be a value. That's what
I agree.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I think this this dwelled on, and I spoke too much.
No, it's okay. But in keeping with the tradition of MGTOW talks, most of the traditions of trying to stay focused, I think we've spoken for quite some time, and I think we've covered the issues that we wanted to cover. If you have anything else to add, now is the opportunity, sir.
All I'm going to say is that to everyone listening, and I know you have a bigger audience than me, and you know, at least people are listening to content that has some value in it. Do try and listen to or content that at least has some meaning, has something to offer you. And I think within MGTOW, if you do understand at least whatever you and Barbarossa say and Spetsnaz say, because I'm just gonna pick the big three, the value, the love for other men does come naturally, and the activism, at least in how I envision it, and you know, I think we agree in terms of like helping other men, comes naturally after all, and that's all I want. I don't want anything more.
Okay, the Lord Doctor has spoken, and with that we will close up shop. Thanks for watching, or rather listening, and we will check you out for, well, another iteration at some other point in time. Everyone take care and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.